Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. So, welcome to Greek theatre, tragedy, and the characteristics of Greek theatre. So, this is the timeline of Greek drama, starting with 7th century BC and following like then 6th century BC. So, there are famous incidents, what happened, famous people who were born, and the famous things that were done in those days. For example, Aeschylus was born in 525 BC, Sophocles in 496. In 499 to 496, there was a dramatic competition, and then his first dramatic victory. Then Aeschylus' Parisians, then his famous plays which were there, like his Suppliant Women, Orestes, and then his death in 456 BC. Then Greek drama, Aristophanes, he was born in 450 BC. Sophocles wrote Ajax, Antigone. So the famous things are here. You can pause the video and see the timeline. And here the timeline ends like with the death of Sophocles, and then trial and death of Socrates. So Aristotle, his Republic. So these were the timelines in Greek drama. Now, the parts of Greek theatre. First of all, there is orchestra. So orchestra, literally known as the dancing space, it was normally circular. It was a level space where the chorus would dance, sing, and interact with the actors who were on the stage near the scene. The earliest orchestras were simply made of hard earth, but in the classical period, some orchestras began to paved with the marble and other materials. So this was development in that. And the theatre of Dionysus in Athens, it was about 60 feet in diameter. So this is about the physical setting of where the plays were performed. Then theatron, it literally means the viewing place, the place for spectators, the place for audience. This was like a hill, like seats were shaped people could sit and they could view everything. So the spectators in 5th century BC, they probably sat on cushions or boards, but by 4th century, many Greek theatres had marble seats. So with the development of tragedy, they developed the theatre as well. Now this is the view of it, where we can see this altar, which is normally of some Greek god. Then there is orchestra. Then there is a scene, which is called the main stage, where you in and exit. There's a place for audience, there's a place for parados entering, and the parados, like it can enter from both the ways, from right to left. So audience has a rising space, seats where they can sit and view, like even the last person, he's sitting too high and can view everything. And they were designed in such a way that people could listen to the voice of the actor, and actors needed a very potential and powerful voice to convey their sound to the people. So the scene means a tent. That was a building directly behind the stage, where the stage actors, they were preparing themselves, and they could wear certain costumes. And normally this happened that even the tragedy, it was not shown on the stage in the earlier Greek dramas, because it was it needed certain perfection, and it was gruesome, horrible. So such acts were performed in the backstage. Then there is parados. So parados means passageways. So these are the passageways from where chorus members or actors, they could come up and they could go to the stage, or they could perform, they could dance. The ancient Greek theatre, its history began with a festival honoring their gods. So god Dionysus, who was the son of Zeus and god of wine and festivals and wine making. So it was a festival called by city Dionysia in Athens. And in this festival, men used to perform songs to welcome Dionysus. Plays were only presented at city Dionysia festival, where they would be having some presents for the people. So the word tragedy basically means comes from the Greek word tragos, which means goat song. So whoever was the winner in that competition was given a goat as a present or as a prize. Tragedy, comedy, and satyr plays were the theatrical forms. Tragedy and comedy were viewed as completely separate genres. Satyr plays dealt with a mythological subject in a comic manner, like it was somewhat linked to the comedy. Aristotle's Poetic sets out a thesis about the perfect structure for tragedy. So these are kind of shapes, which are the shapes of the masks, which were used the comedy. In comedy, people would be using the mask in the center. The tragedy would be employing the first mask, and satyr plays is displayed by the third mask. Now, Thespis was the father of tragedy, and Thespis was the person who introduced first actor in tragedy. So, shows would also take the form of competitions for who could create the better performance and who could write good plays. And the earlier recorded competition winner was Thespis, who was best known as father of tragedy. So Thespis is also regarded as one of the founding fathers of drama. That's why we sometimes refer to modern actors as Thespians. So this name is given to them after Thespis, who was the father of tragedy. Now, this was a golden age. Now, in this golden age, there was a time when civilization was moving, architecture was in bloom, many buildings were developing, literature was being written, mythologies were there, which were narrated by the people, epics were written, translated, performed. So this was an era and the birthplace, though ancient Greece was the birthplace of modern civilization. So the tragedy as a genre, that it was popular because they were most in demand stories of the time. An audience wanted to see a story that ended with a tragedy or that had a tragic moral. Some of the Aristotle's writing indicate dithyrambics inspired many theatrical tragedy productions, and dithyrambics were choral hymns sung in the honor of Dionysus at each year's festival. So to honor the god Dionysus, they would be writing such hymns which were performed in tragedies, and tragedies were liked by the people because they would give them elements of pity and fear and certain moral lessons. Then tragedies were often played alongside annual rituals undertaken by the ancient Greeks to honor Dionysus. So citizens would wear masks and sacrifice animals, usually goats, while singing or performing a tragic poem or play. This link led to the adoption of Dionysus as a god of theatre, in addition to other things for which the ancient Greeks worshipped him. So this was another thing which brought Dionysus near to the artists, that they started singing for him. The first performances of tragedy would only have one actor on stage at a time, because people did not have much scope of actors, or they could not find some proficient actors, so they went with the one, and there was scarcity of expression on face and of costumes. So typically they would perform wearing a mask and full body costume. So audience would believe them to be delivering the voices of gods. As such, tragedies that reenacted a specific god's life, not always Dionysus, would also become popular. So it was not always about Dionysus, it was also about rest of the Greek gods. For example, if we read Iliad or Odyssey, then we can find so many gods mentioned in that. So tragedies were not only welcoming Dionysus, but rest of the gods too. Later, up to 2 actors would join performances. However, for many years, 3 was the maximum. So maximum number was in the time of Sophocles, and the number of speaking roles allowed in performance. So this is not only that only one actor was there in the time of Thespis, or only two actors were there in the time of Aeschylus, or three in the time of Sophocles. Yes, actors were there, but they were in shape of chorus members. So here, three actors means three main actors who would go on stage, perform. So this is what is meant by one, two, or three actors. Another feature of tragedy is that they always kill their characters off stage, as I mentioned, because death was implied, and it was considered inappropriate to show death directly, or maybe they could not present that with such a good spectacle or expression. So they would only tell that how that person died. Comedies represented ancient Greeks' daily lives and absurdities that could happen to them. In contrast, tragedies often were set in the past and were more likely to include appearances from the gods. Aristotle says that comedy consists of characters who are there solely for the audience to laugh at. So, apart from being horrified from the tragic spectacle, comedy itself was there and people loved it and they really enjoyed the comic scenes. Satire emerged from tragedy and quickly became popular. Ancient Greek satire was a mix of comedy and drama, sometimes referred to as tragicomedy. Ancient Greek satire would rely heavily on sexual themes and topics such as drunkenness, and it's meant to get a lot of laughs from the audience. So when comedy and drama was combined, that is tragicomedy, like we see Winter's Tale by Shakespeare, so that is also a tragicomedy. The tradition of mask in ancient Greek theatre. So without the mask, the audience could not hear the actors as well, and those at the top of theatre could not make the actors' facial expression. So this was important that they should be wearing masks. First of all, they were small in number. A person needed many people for a drama. So since it was said that a person was required to present three tragedies and one comedy or satyr play in a competition, so they could not produce enough actors. So they had to have certain actors who could replace certain roles, and to hide their identification, because a person was having several roles playing there in a drama, so that person would have mask on his face. Moreover, expression on those masks were visible. There were different masks for tragedy and comedy. So the tragic masks, they were very horrible, and these masks were very detailed, so that a person could laugh at them or could feel horror from those masks. So this mask was for the tragedy. So there's no example of ancient Greek masks today painting on vases from the 3rd century BC, and they show various actors preparing for the plays and donning masks. So it is also thought masks were left at the altar of Dionysus or the scene of performances during annual festivals as an offering to Dionysus. So once the play was over, so the masks were sacrificed as something very honorable to be presented to the gods. So they would sacrifice the mask on the altar of Dionysus. The actors in a play were often not only the ones wearing the mask. It was typical for the choir and orchestra to wear masks to fit the aesthetics on the scene. So for every kind of role, they had to wear the relevant masks. So not only the actors, but also the choir or orchestra, they would be wearing certain masks on them. The smiling and crying mask image that we often associate with acting and theatre originated during this time. So whenever you look at some dramatic company, so there is always a mask that is in black, which is tragic, and a mask in white, which is comic or laughing. So it is originated from the Greek time. Talia, the muse of comedy. So Talia was the muse of comedy. These muses were the daughter of Zeus. The two masks also were known to the muses of Greek mythology. Talia was a muse of comedy and she was depicted as a cheerful mask. So that is why this mask represents that muse. She was young, full of energy, and always smiling. Many statues representing Thalia also include trumpets or other types of horns, such as like their imageries allude to how these instruments were used to make an actor's voice carry in an ancient Greek comedy. So the smiling mask refers to Thalia, who was a muse of comedy. So every good writer would invoke or seek help before writing a tragedy or an epic play to certain muse. So this muse was Thalia. Malpun was the muse of tragedy. So on the other hand, she was the muse of tragedy. Her mask is sad and she is often depicted with a weapon in her hand. Sometimes she even holds the mask itself. Malpun in the art also seen to be wearing the Kothroners, also known as buskin, which were boots only to be worn by actors performing in tragedy. So masks were made from natural materials such as cork, then stiffened up with plaster to hold their shapes, just like these are in modernized form they're made today. So these masks were highly what you can say is like they were dependable, and they were certainly sometimes wig was also attached with it, with animal hair or human hair. So these masks not only depicted faces but also contained hair behind them. Now the characteristics of Greek drama or tragedy. So Greek drama took prominent place in Greek culture in 550 BC in Athens. The Greek festival Dionysia performed plays to honor the Greek gods Dionysus. Dionysus was a god of grapes, wine, and winemaking, and he was son of Zeus. Tragedies were only performed once. You could not repeat them. All the actors in beginning were male, and afterwards females were added. This was the golden age of Greek drama, and during Dionysia, there was a competition between three playwrights who would submit three tragedies and one satyr play. Ancient Greek plays are more like modern operas. So a chorus is more typically composed of 12 to 15 young men who would sing and dance. Like in Oedipus Rex, there are 15 choral members. They were usually preparing to enter military service, and one serves as a choragus, the leader of the chorus. So from those chorus people, one person is always there who talks and represents those chorus who are representing the audience. So that person is basically the choragus. In the beginning, there was only one actor, and by classical period, there were three actors. However, this did not mean that there were only three actors in a play. We'll be knowing in the end of the video that who were the people who introduced these actors there. Most important part of costume was the mask, and they were usually made of leather, wood, cloth, and paste. Had open mouths so that actor could be he could be heard clearly, and wigs were sometimes attached to them. A tragedy was based on these five elements. First of all, there was a prologue. So in a tragedy, a monologue or dialogue preceding the entry of the chorus, which presented the tragedy's topic. So chorus would come on the stage and tell the audience what is the topic of the tragedy. The second part was parados, which was an entrance song. So this was the entrance song of the chorus, in which chorus comes on the stage and remains afterwards on the stage and represents the public. They are wearing masks and their dancing is expressive. Typically, the parados and other choral odes involve the following parts, repeated in order several times. First of all, a strophe, a stanza that chorus reads or sings, in which the chorus moves in one direction from right to left towards the altar, and then there is anti-strophe, counter-turn, where chorus comes back from left to right and saying a stanza or singing a stanza into the opposite direction. And then there is epode, that is after the song. So epode is a different way where the chorus is standing still but it is singing. There are several scenes, typically 3 to 5, in which one or two actors interact with the chorus. They're at least in part sung or chanted. Each scene is terminated by a paean, which is a choral ode giving a praise to Dionysus. So, in which Dionysus is praised, so that is called a paean. Exodus is the last ode in which the chorus concludes what happened, and that is the final song of the chorus in a tragedy. The plot is very important element of a tragedy. So these are the major elements. Plot is basically determining the story. The characters include the tragic hero who has a hamartia and has a downfall. Thought and theme is there, which is depending upon the history or the mythology. Diction is there, in which literary devices such as allegories, metaphors, pun, similes are used. Songs are sung by the chorus, which add to the player and aesthetics of the drama. Spectacle is there, which creates special effects. This is least important, but still it is there. So, as far as characters are concerned, so Thespis was the person who was the father of Greek tragedy. He introduced first actor. Aeschylus brought second actor on stage, and Sophocles brought third actor, whereas Euripides brought female protagonists on stage. Again, telling you that one actor doesn't mean that there is only one actor who's performing all the tragedy. Definitely chorus members are there, but chief actor is one. So in Sophocles, we find three main actors. If we talk about Oedipus Rex, we have King Oedipus, Creon, and Jocasta, like three actors at one time on stage. So this is all about Greek tragedy and Greek theater. I hope it helped you a lot in learning what Greek theater and tragedy was. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.